Hi there. Last year, last August, we did a production of a beautifully written play by Lauren Gunderson called Silent Sky. It was about Henrietta Leavitt, a real life person. She was a female astronomer at Harvard, and her discoveries changed astronomy and our understanding of the universe. Because many of you found the production noteworthy and beautiful and moving, I'd like to share with you how this production went from the page to the stage. And I've invited the team from that show, a group of very, very talented people who have done a myriad number of productions at our theater, which you guys have enjoyed over the years. First of all, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Margolius, the director, Jack Magaw, the set designer, Karin Kopischke, the costume designer, and Steve White, the lighting designer. Thank you all for being here. It's so great to see you again. Well, to start off, I should say that when we get a published script, oftentimes, like with Agatha Christie, she's very, very specific about what the set should look like. How many doors, how many rooms, where the furniture is, etc. But in this published script of Silent Sky, Lauren Gunderson, the playwright, has given us very, very little information about how it's to be done. She basically says at the beginning to keep it simple and keep it moving. So there was a lot of creativity left up to this team right here before you. And it all starts at the top, the person at the helm of the production, the director, Elizabeth. So, Elizabeth, you read the play, and then what?
Uh, I read the play, loved the play, fell in love with the characters and the story. And it should be noted that I had never sadly heard of Henrietta Leavitt or her colleagues before reading this play, and was absolutely fascinated with what they discovered and how they discovered it. So I was immediately enamored by the way in which it was written and the subject matter.
Yes, very, very few people knew about her.
Yeah, it's true. And it's a shame because her discoveries opened up literally worlds of other things that we are still learning today. So it was such a joy to read about her and start to understand what she did and what her discoveries led to.
So you read the play, and then you really liked it, and then your next step is like, how do we do this? Or what was the next step for you?
So once I've read the play several times and feel like I have a real understanding of the story, I start to conceptualize the piece, and concept is very important to me, and it's where I start and where I end as far as telling a story on stage. And I was, of course, fascinated by the universe and the stars and all of the things that she discovered about the patterns of certain stars. So I was fascinated with that, and then I was equally fascinated with how these women made their discoveries, which was through a series, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of glass plates that were photographs of the stars. So I started to get really interested in light and in glass, and how that would turn into a concept for the piece.
That spoke to you from the play.
It did. It really did.
Now, you have a way of working where you oftentimes find an artist that you feel inspires you in instances like this.
Yes, and I found, I think the perfect artist for this particular piece because he's an Italian architect. His name's Carlos Santambragio, and he actually, most of his architecture is entirely glass. And one of his most famous pieces is a glass house. That not only the walls are glass, but the floors and the stairs, the furniture is all glass, and even the appliances. And so it's a stunning piece of architecture, and it also really well encapsulated this idea of being inside a space while at the same time letting in the larger universe around the space inside as well. And I was really, really captivated with his work. And we used him as a basis for moving forward into this idea.
So you went to the team here and you brought some photos of his work
I did.
and explained what you just explained to me
I
about
did.
how you were inspired by that. What was the next step then?
So I went to Jack probably first and said, I want an entirely glass design. How do we do that, and what does that look like on stage? I knew that that would probably cause some challenges for our lighting designer, Stephen. And I knew also, as far as costume design, that I wanted to explore everything being absolutely see-through and clear, and have the feel of glass. So that's sort of what I put on the table.
So, how did the team take that after you said, "Oh my goodness, this woman is crazy," and then you thought, "Okay, I trust her. How are we going to make this work?"
I didn't see it at the beginning. Our first discussion, I was basically, I this is, I don't know what you're even talking about. so, so it took me a while. I mean, in an illustration of what collaboration for theater is, it took a while for me to do my own work on it and to come around and see sort of what Elizabeth was seeing, and to be able to do the work that I needed to do in order to create something that went along with what she was seeing in her mind, right?
So, at first, what you perhaps had pictured in your mind was not the same.
No, it's what I was tasked to do is to take her idea and think it through and abstract it in such a way, and not just the look of it, but the way that the actors move through the space, and the way that light interacts with it, is taking all that and abstracting it and designing it in such a way that it works on the stage, right? So I knew from the very beginning, no, it's not really a glass house, right? But what I didn't know, and what I worked through, was what is the idea of a glass house, and what we arrived at was a design that uses light to create basically a transparent cube around the actors on stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, the impression I had from the first production meetings were that you guys were all very challenged by this idea, and yet, knowing you guys, you were all up for it, and to wrap your brain around this. So, you went away and thought about it, and then came back next with, Elizabeth, I should also ask you, in terms of how you saw the production working, it wasn't just visually, but there was, in your mind, movement involved, right?
Absolutely. So I'm so interested in movement and on stage, and how that interacts with design, all of the design. And there was a particular phrase in the piece, and the exact phrase that Henrietta says to her sister, and is it doesn't change, nothing changes, it just changes form, it just shifts. Nothing changes, it just shifts. And I was really that phrase really struck me. And so I started to become interested in what if the actors never leave the stage, or if they do, it's just momentarily, and instead everything shifts around them. So that idea started to percolate, and then knowing that we had an amazing crew of interns at Peninsula Players every summer that do many things, including work backstage, I thought, well, if I can give them a little bit of movement training and sort of create the feeling of a ballet of movement around the actors that shift the pieces that Jack creates around them, so that they don't have to shift anything, they don't change. I thought that might be an interesting idea. So that's what we did.
So, Steve and Karin, where were you in the discussions here at the beginning, and what was your thinking?
Well, I had worked with Elizabeth on one previous show, and then seen another show that she had done at Peninsula Players. So I knew going into this first meeting that whatever I was thinking about would probably not be what Elizabeth would be envisioning. So I came to the meeting very excited to see what Elizabeth was thinking, and expecting something that would be very difficult to wrap my head around initially, but would really push me to go further than I would go on my own. So I was very excited. So when she said transparent, see-through, I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I knew that from the pictures she brought and what she was talking about, that we would figure it out together. I remember listening to her talk to Jack, thinking, that's really going to be challenging for him. And then trying to figure out how we really didn't want transparent costumes, but how we could achieve that luminous quality she was talking about, or the light shining through. So it took a few meetings, as I remember. We really, every time we met, I don't know if it was 3 times, we got a little closer. And eventually all got to, I think we created it together, created the world.
Mm-hmm. And Steve, where were you in this process from the beginning?
Scared mostly. So I have not worked with Elizabeth before, but I loved hearing what she talked about. Being a visual designer, you would think that I'm first drawn in scripts to movement and tempos and rhythms and things. And immediately that's where I went on this show. But I also think that my job as a lighting designer isn't just to shape space, but I actually, kind of like Karin, shaping or draping the actors. I sort of approach my work as I'm draping the actors or the characters in light. So then now to take it to a whole nother level and have the furniture and the actors' costumes, the light could come through them, or that they would be translucent in some ways, just took that whole idea to a whole new level. So yes, I was scared, but very excited. It was a piece that I lost a lot of sleep over, just dreaming about it all night long. But yes, I was quite happy to be involved in this production.
So all these ideas and feelings and thoughts went out there, and then you all knew that you had to make this concrete. You had to come up with a set with costumes, with lights. So what happened in the next step? How did we start actually physicalizing all of this?
Talking about collaborating with the designers, my next step, I had a number of ideas, and I got together with the costume shop manager. And one of the things I really wanted to do was to work with cotton voile, which was a popular fabric around the 1900s, and very appropriate for these characters. And I knew that if it was lit from the front, it would be opaque. If it was lit from the back, it would be transparent. And to a certain extent, it could be lit from underneath in a couple different ways. Jack had talked about plexiglass on the floor, and Steve had talked about lighting instruments coming up from the floor. So I knew the women, if we had light coming up from the floor, they could glow from that. But I wanted to talk to Kyle about lighting from within the actresses' costumes. We had done a little work with LEDs in the past, and Kyle is always up for a challenge. And I wanted to talk to him about possibly filtering LED lighting through the women's undergarments so that at certain points in the show, they would light from underneath and almost look like a constellation. So that was my next step.
Because that, I think, Elizabeth, tied into your final image.
Yes, and that was, coming back to Elizabeth and saying, what do you think of this? And where would it be appropriate to use it? So there were very specific moments in the show where the costumes were illuminated from underneath, but very wisely, Elizabeth saved that final effect, the stars coming through, for the final moment of the show with Steve's lighting and the tableau. And I'm getting goosebumps as I talk about it.
It's interesting because I think this process was a really great example of having a sort of a germ of an idea, of a concept, and then having this brilliant group of designers and taking that idea, and then with every meeting and every step, all the way up until the final moment of right before we opened, continuing to see that idea just grow and grow and grow. And one of Karin's mention of the final moment, one of the things that all of us really wanted to do is include the entire universe, the entire audience in the final moment. And so we had so many discussions, and Steve should be talking about this, and Jack rather than me, but I'll just say it was important that the audience become part of the universe as well by the final moment. And Steve, did we do that?
Sure. Yeah, it was, Jack points out frequently, is that none of us saw that final moment until opening night. It took so long to tech it in the tech rehearsal process that, and we had tried it all different ways and just wasn't quite right. And so the story of an opening night, we all saw it for the first time in its final perfect version, and we were all, yes, the goosebumps come back still talking about it. We were so proud.
So Jack, you had to come up with a set of, something physical that the actors could walk on, that all of this could happen in.
Well, my next step after the initial meetings was to make it all Steve White's problem, right? By making it all about lighting. But Steve and I have known each other for a long time and had worked together on a lot of shows. So I really felt like the two of us were up for really creating a design where the scenery and the lighting are woven together into almost a single idea. And so the lighting equipment in the theater became a part, and the light beams themselves became scenery as part of the world, that crossover. And that also allowed us to create a very dynamic lighting world for movement in a sort of dance sort of way. So using lighting equipment as architecture and of really going back and forth between all of us and connecting everywhere we can with costumes, with lighting, with sound, everything going together is where we finally got at the end of the play, which we didn't see until opening night.
Can you just give a brief description of what we actually ended up seeing on stage?
I can you want me to show you?
Sure.
I have it right. Was that a hint?
Yeah. Oh, well.
So basically, it's a platform with a back wall, and then you can see the lighting instruments to the sides and above, right there. So it's a very simple design, but it was designed to facilitate the movement of the actors and their composition in space, right? Because the actors in their costumes become part of the composition, part of the picture while the play is happening, and as the light is moving around them.
And could you say something about that back wall?
The back wall, the inspiration from it came from the idea of wanting to create the idea of the universe without projecting realistic pictures of stars. I wanted to find an abstraction of it. So it's basically, it's sort of based on computer punch cards and perforated metal that's used in architecture. And it was, there are 10,000 holes in the back wall that were lit from inside and from the front in order to create the last moment of the play.
And I believe there was light also underneath the edge of the platform, right?
There was light around the edge and also in I think 6 or 9 positions inside the platform shining up through the floor.
Because, and also the furniture was clear, translucent.
Yes, translucent, right, as were some of the props.
And some, yeah, yeah. Well, that was, I think, were you all happy with how it ended up? I certainly was. It was so beautiful.
I think
it was exciting to see it come together.
It was. It was.
And also serve the story, which was a wonderful, beautiful story with the performers were terrific in it.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you all so much for being here and taking us through that journey to a reality that so many of our audience members just loved. Not just because of the story, but all of the artistry that all of you put into it. It was, I'm prejudiced, of course, but I thought it was breathtaking. So
thank you, Fred.
Thank you for being here again. And I really, really look forward to all of us working together again. All right?
Yes, likewise. Thank you, Greg.
all right, bye.
Take care.
Good seeing everyone.
Bye-bye.